In the spring of 2023, this disturbing body cam footage captured a scene that detectives later described as one of the most gruesome they had seen in decades.
Garbage cans. Yeah.
What followed was an investigation that slowly uncovered a horrifying attack, a carefully planned cover-up, and a motive so disturbing that even the officers working the case struggled to fully understand it.
You know, some of our detectives have been detectives for 20 years, and they describe this as one of the most gruesome crime scenes that they've ever been a part of.
By the time we reach the end of this story, one question will stay with you. How do you plan something like this for 16 days and feel absolutely nothing afterward? For starters, this story takes us to Englewood, Colorado, a quiet city just outside Denver with the Rocky Mountains sitting in the background. It's the kind of place people move to for a calmer life. Safe, peaceful, and pretty ordinary. One of the apartment buildings along Englewood Parkway fit right into that routine. Just another building, just another normal evening. But on March 25, 2023, around 6 o'clock that night, the Englewood Police Department received a call from inside that building. And what they would walk into would prove something unsettling. You never really know what might be happening behind your neighbor's door.
911, where's your emergency?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. This is Reggie Maclaren. I'm calling from Art Walk Apartments, apartment N308. I came around 3 o'clock and I found my wife and my daughter murdered.
I'm sorry, you what?
I found my daughter and my wife. Somebody killed them in the apartment. They have been murdered.
Okay, how do you know that they're dead?
Well, I am here. They are dead, you know, because the guy, whoever entered, he was trying to take them in a trash can or take away, but he couldn't do it. So I need.
Are your wife and daughter still inside the apartment?
Inside the apartment. It is
I'm
a
getting
security
help
building.
to you, okay? I'm getting help
Yeah,
to
thank you.
Okay. And how were they injured? Can you tell?
Well, ma'am, I am very disturbed. I have no idea.
The caller was 81-year-old Reginald Maclaren. And as heartbreaking as that call already was, Reggie had managed to tell the dispatcher who he believed might be responsible. His nephews.
But how were they hurt? Were they shot? Were they stabbed? Can you tell me how they were injured?
They were stabbed. Not stabbed, somebody used a hammer or... I don't know, you know. My daughter's purse, their IDs were gone. All the things are upside down, you know.
According to Reggie, they were involved with gangs, and they used to live in the same building, in apartment 205, just a couple of floors below. He even gave the dispatcher their names, telling them he believed both of them were capable of something like this. So by the time officers arrived and made their way to apartment N308, they already had those names in mind. When they knocked on the door, Reggie opened it himself, an elderly man, clearly shaken, struggling to finish his sentences as he tried to explain what had happened.
Please forward, so no! Right, me. I'm with you, Brian.
Now, Reggie told officers he had been out of the apartment for a couple of hours that afternoon, stepped away briefly, came back, and found them, and according to him, whoever had broken in tried to clean the place up afterward, but stopped halfway through and ran. Like something spooked them mid-cleanup and they just bolted. And walking into that apartment, that part of his story actually held up. At least on the surface, because the place didn't look like a crime scene. It looked like a move. Boxes stacked neatly against the kitchen wall, suitcases lined up in the master bedroom, everything organized, everything packed, like a family with somewhere to be by the weekend. Nothing thrown around, nothing ransacked, no obvious sign that anything violent had happened in that space at all, which, if you think about it, was its own kind of unsettling. And then there were the two bins on the living room floor, large plastic containers, one just inside the front door, one near the sofa, both tipped on their sides. And these things were brand new. Not a scratch on the base, not a scuff mark, not a speck of dirt on the wheels. These bins had never once sat out on a curb. They had never been used for garbage. They had never been used for anything they were actually designed for. The only reason they were in that apartment was for what was inside them.
Fuck. Garbage cans. Fuck.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
There's a closet right here. House is cool. Yeah. It's like at least one confirmed so far.
2.
You have 2 of them?
There's 2. You want that one too?
Yep.
Inside each one were the bodies of the 2 women who had lived in this apartment. Both had suffered repeated, severe blunt force injuries. One had been partially dismembered. Not in a frenzy, investigators immediately understood, but for a reason. To reduce the volume of a human body, to make it fit inside a container that was too small to hold it otherwise.
Sounds like husband came home, finds his wife and daughter deceased. They both have been shoved into a trash can apiece. So it looks like, by all appearances, it looked like whoever did this was trying to put the bodies in the trash can and take them wherever. Husband seems to think he knows who did it. We're trying to talk with him. He's pretty shook up, obviously. But yeah, you might want to call the troops on out, sir.
A paramedic was called to the scene to formally establish time of death. Officers found the rest of the apartment surprisingly contained given the extent of the injuries. The sofa's back cushions were soaked through with blood, but a blanket had been draped across them. The kitchen sink showed signs of scrubbing, the bathroom sink, the bathtub, cleaning products nearby, drain residue suggesting a sustained and deliberate cleanup effort.
Just FYI, the sofa's covered in blood.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that, and if you look underneath those bed sheets and stuff, that pillow's covered in blood, and it looks like they probably were hiding something underneath there as well. It would appear that whoever did this took extensive steps to clean up the crime scene, as well as purchased. It looks like they either purchased or found 2 large trash cans and a significant amount of blood splatters like that. Again, it looks like whoever did this tried to clean it up.
And in the closet near the boiler, an axe, left in place, not wiped down, not concealed, simply set aside, as if the person who used it had run out of time or energy to deal with it. Beside it, a handsaw, somewhat less visibly marked, also not cleaned, also just sitting there.
We probably need to do at least a quick Miranda on him, and just talk to him and see what information we can get. If the suspect's out, on about, if he's under danger to the public, we need to find that out as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Like how does he know this? How does he know he knows who did it? That type of thing.
Yeah.
But
Reggie was taken down to speak with detectives, but honestly, he wasn't doing well physically. He was complaining of chest pain. Said the stress of coming home to that had triggered his heart condition, which, under the circumstances, nobody was going to question. He was transported to the Swedish Medical Center in Englewood to get checked out, while investigators stayed behind at the building to keep working the scene. And it was during this window that officers started piecing together who exactly was inside those containers. So let me tell you about Bethany and Ruth Maclaren, because these were not just 2 names on a report. These were 2 remarkable women. Bethany was 70 years old. She was born in a small hillside town in eastern India, grew up attending a Christian missionary school, the kind of upbringing that instills a real quiet discipline in a person. And that discipline followed her. As a young woman, she joined the military as a nurse. But she didn't stop there. She kept climbing, kept pushing, until she reached the rank of captain. Which, if you know anything about military culture, is not something that just happens. That takes years of dedication and earning it. In 1986, she married Reginald Maclaren, and the 2 of them settled in Denver. A year later, they had their daughter, Ruth. Ruth Jennifer Maclaren was born with cerebral palsy and epilepsy, conditions that never went away, that made her body unreliable in ways that meant she needed her parents' support throughout her entire life. She was 35 years old and still living at home with them. But here's the thing about Ruth that I really want you to hold on to. She was studying law. She wanted to become a lawyer. She talked openly about independence, her own apartment one day, her own career, a future that belonged entirely to her. Her body had been setting limits on her since the day she was born, and she had been pushing back against those limits her entire life. Neighbors in the building remembered both women fondly. They described them the way you describe people you're genuinely glad live near you. Quiet, warm, pleasant in passing. Not one person had a single negative thing to say about either of them. That is, who was inside those containers. While Reggie was being treated at the hospital, investigators back at the building were quietly starting to hit a wall with the story he had given them. And the wall had a very specific shape. It was time. Think about everything that had been done inside that apartment. The violence, the dismemberment, the cleanup of multiple surfaces, the sinks, the bathtub, the floors, the staging of those 2 containers, the blanket carefully draped over the back of the sofa to hide what was soaked into the cushions. You do not do all of that in 2 hours. One person cannot walk into an apartment, do what was done to those 2 women, clean it to that degree, and stage the scene, all within a 2-hour window. It's just not physically possible. And Reggie had said he was gone for roughly 2 hours. Officers on scene were already saying it to each other under their breath.
I don't think this was done in 2 hours.
Then the neighbors started talking.
You may want to talk to the neighbor as well. I say that because I think Will has actually spoken to the gentleman back here. Make sure that's
Okay, and his name is Will?
His name is Will. Will and Kim, they both live in that unit. I hope they're okay.
Well, to be 100% honest with you, mom and daughter are deceased. And so we're trying to figure out what is going on. So that's why I'm asking you so many.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I guess I could have led with that before I started asking you, when are you coming back?
No, sure.
Yeah, so we're trying to figure out what's going
A man named Will lived a few doors down. He wasn't close with Reggie, just the casual familiarity of 2 people who share a building and occasionally end up in the same space. He told officers that a day or 2 earlier, Reggie had caught him in the parking garage for a quick favor.
He came over to me the other day while I was smoking in the garage, and he was like, can you do me a favor? We're moving up on Saturday. And I was like, okay. And he was like, if it's after hours, can I drop off the keys to you? And I was like, okay. I told him my apartment number. And then we saw him walking around this morning, and then I hear all this shit, and it's like...
Okay, what time?
Will mentioned something else. The way Reggie had framed the move when he asked the favor.
But it did say I'm going overseas, so I didn't...
Like I'm as in singular?
Yeah, it seems singular and things like that. So.
Okay.
A neighbor across the hallway added another piece. That afternoon, just before 4 o'clock, she had watched Reggie step out of his apartment. He walked down to his car in the parking garage, stood there briefly, then came straight back upstairs. She found it slightly odd. He had locked his door for a trip that lasted no more than a minute. He hadn't taken anything to the car. He had just gone and returned. The neighbor walked them to the white sedan. When officers shone their lights through the window, they found the rear seats folded completely flat.
Yeah, but I don't even know if that's it because it had 2 American flags up here. But it looks like this model. But that's my car.
It's flat.
Stay with this car, don't let me touch it.
Yep.
The move. That was the easy explanation, right? Flat seats, more room for boxes. Makes total sense, except there was nothing in that car. Not one box from those stacks along the kitchen wall, not a single suitcase from the bedroom. Nothing had been loaded, nothing had been touched. Those flat rear seats weren't prepped for a move. They were the exact dimensions you would need to lay 2 large upright plastic bins on their sides and drive them somewhere.
I was going to go over to, actually go to Walmart and see if they purchased 2 large trash cans recently, or Home Depot or whatever. Those trash cans are pretty brand new to me.
Are they?
Well, the wheels don't look really scuffed up.
You could send some over to Walmart and see if they got the same rating. Yeah, these are brand new.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They look brand new to me. And there's no dirt on them. There's no scuff marks.
Investigators quickly ruled out the nearby Walmart. The bins hadn't come from there. Instead, they traced them to Home Depot. And yes, it was indeed Reginald Maclaren who had bought them. But the idea that he'd rushed out in a panic right after the murders to cover his tracks? That turned out to be completely wrong. When they pulled up the transaction, it showed something surprising. Reggie had actually bought the bins weeks earlier, on March 9th, long before anyone could have imagined what would happen. Investigators then tracked down the employee who had processed the sale.
Oh, I remember the trash cans.
Yes.
And he had a mask on, so I really didn't see much of his face, but I do remember the 2 trash cans. I do remember asking him if he lived in Denver City County, how come they're not providing trash cans for him? And I didn't quite understand his answer because he was muttering kind of underneath that mask.
Now, a neighbor just a few doors down from the Maclarens had one of those Ring doorbell cameras, and when investigators pulled the full archive, what they found essentially closed the book on every remaining question about how this had unfolded. The footage from March 9th showed Reggie leaving the building and coming back later that afternoon. The Home Depot trip, the bins, the handsaw, loaded into the back of the sedan, seats already flat. All of it time-stamped and documented on camera without Reggie even knowing it. But it didn't stop there. Across other days in that same footage, a separate trip to another store where Reggie had purchased an axe, and another trip where he picked up 2 gas canisters. The gas canisters were recovered inside the apartment, unused. Investigators never fully confirmed what they were for, but the most likely theory was that Reggie had considered burning the apartment down afterward, destroy the remaining evidence, make the whole thing even harder to unravel, and then either ran out of time, lost his nerve, or just decided it was too risky. But think about what those canisters tell you about his state of mind. He wasn't just planning the crime. He was planning for what happened after the crime. He was thinking about contingencies. He was building in backup options. This wasn't someone spiraling in a moment of panic. This was someone who had been sitting with this plan long enough to start problem solving around it. And then on the morning of March 25th, the Ring camera caught him making a series of short trips in and out of the building, in and out, each time carrying something small, something that fit in one hand, not boxes. Meanwhile, officers searching the building's dumpsters that evening found an item that would prove Reggie's entire account was false.
I'm gonna hand you bags. You got a knife? I got a knife. We're gonna cut bags, start going through them. Oh. 205. Hey, I found a cut-up Social Security card for a Bethany Maclaren and a partial cut-up Colorado ID that appears to be the same in this dumpster down here.
The IDs, the ones Reggie had flagged on his 911 call as missing from his daughter's purse, the ones he had offered as evidence of a robbery, as a reason investigators should be looking at his nephews, sliced into pieces, discarded in the building's dumpster, thrown away based on the Ring camera timestamps during one of his quiet morning trips through the hallway, hands carrying something small. He had destroyed them himself, then reported them stolen, to point the investigation in a direction that had nothing to do with him. About 3 hours after that 911 call, detectives were sitting at Reggie's bedside at the hospital. He was still receiving treatment. The chest pain was real, he said. The stress of coming home to that scene had set off his heart condition. He had actually collapsed in the apartment before he was even able to call for help. Detectives were patient with him. They just asked him to walk through the day one more time from the beginning. And for several hours, Reggie held his story, the nephews, the gang connections, coming home, finding them, the shock of it dropping him to the floor. He stayed consistent until detectives put everything on the table in front of him. The March 9th Home Depot receipt, the Ring camera footage, the IDs, and the neighbor's statement. That's when Reginald Maclaren went quiet, and then he started talking. What he said next was not the confession of a man who had cracked under pressure. That is what makes this so difficult to sit with. It was the account of someone who had made a decision and was completely at peace with it. He explained it calmly. He had worked in hospital shared services most of his life. Recently, he had been let go. He was 81 years old with no real chance of finding new work. He was behind on rent, facing eviction. He had about $8,000 in cash in the apartment, 1 month maybe if they were careful. And here is the part he kept coming back to. He had spent decades working directly alongside people experiencing homelessness. He knew what that life looked like up close. The exposure, the indignity, the particular helplessness of being elderly and disabled with nowhere to go and no system designed to catch you. He could not, he said he simply could not, allow his family to end up living that way.
I don't know what to see the family. I was with them for 36 years. My brother is 35, so 36 years
But I don't want to see my children begging bread on the street and get homeless. How my daughter can live even for one day if she's a homeless, she is cerebral participation.
He said he knew they were in a better place now. He had no regrets. He described the morning of March 25th without any visible distress. Bethany and Ruth were on the sofa. He got the axe, the one he had been storing in the apartment since March 9th. He struck them both. He continued until he was certain they were gone. Then he tried to place them in the containers, and when the bodies didn't fit, he used the saw. The bins ended up being too heavy for him to move to the car alone. That part of the plan failed completely, so he spent the rest of the morning doing what he could, cleaning surfaces, cutting up the IDs, making trips to the dumpster, before the chest pain hit and he collapsed. When he came around, he made the call. The nephews had never been there. There was no robbery. The story he had given investigators from the very first moment had been constructed before March 25th ever arrived. He had walked into that 911 call ready with it. Now, before we move on, there is one more thing about this case that I really need you to hear. After the arrest, investigators looked carefully at the financial picture Reggie had described as his reason for everything. The Maclarens had insurance, they had savings, Bethany had some continuing income, their bills were current. A social worker or financial counselor looking at their situation would not have seen a family on the edge of homelessness. They would have seen a family that was going to be okay. Reggie had spent 16 days planning and carrying out the murders of his wife and daughter to protect them from a catastrophe that was not actually coming. 4 days after the murders, Englewood Police Division Chief Tracy Jones held a press conference to formally announce the arrest of Reginald Maclaren.
During the course of that investigation, it was determined that both victims were killed with an axe, and one of the victims had been dismembered with a saw. You know, some of our detectives have been detectives for 20 years, and they described this as one of the most gruesome crime scenes that they've ever been a part of. Our officers who responded, obviously we're taking their mental health into consideration, and we're getting them all the help and resources that they need.
Have you guys, through investigation, been able to determine the credibility of his statement that they were going to be homeless that day?
I think that is all part of the investigation that we're trying to determine if that was in fact the case.
The trial opened in June 2024. His defense had one central argument. Reggie was 81 years old. He had been in cognitive and emotional decline. Witnesses testified that in the weeks before March 25th, he had seemed irrational, incoherent at times, detached from reality in ways that people around him had noticed. And critically, the financial crisis he had been so terrified of, it wasn't real. The family was not actually facing homelessness. So maybe, the defense argued, this was not a calculating predator. Maybe this was a frightened elderly man whose mind had completely broken under a pressure that turned out to be imaginary. And look, that argument is not nothing. An 81-year-old man misreading his financial situation and spiraling into a catastrophic conclusion is not impossible to imagine. But the prosecution's response to that was simple: March 9th. Because here is the thing about frightened people who break. They panic, they act impulsively, they make a mess, they do not spend 16 days carefully sourcing specific tools from multiple stores. They do not purchase gas canisters as a contingency. They do not construct a detailed false narrative involving specific named relatives and a robbery motive and deploy it the second they pick up the phone. They do not dispose of evidence methodically across an entire morning in small, quiet trips through a building hallway. That is not what breaking looks like. That is what planning looks like. The jury deliberated. On July 10, 2024, Reginald Maclaren was found guilty on all counts. 2 consecutive life sentences, no possibility of parole. He was 83 years old at sentencing. A defense attorney who observed the proceedings put it this way afterward: "The prosecution had a very good case. They just reiterated all the pre-planning. The axe, the saw, the trash cans. I was hoping to understand why these 2 murders occurred. I left without any answers. And honestly, I think that is the most honest thing anyone said about this entire case, because there is no answer that actually satisfies. There is no version of the explanation that makes it make sense." Reggie told himself he was protecting them. But Bethany Maclaren was a captain. A woman who had climbed from a missionary school on a hillside in eastern India to a military rank that takes years of real effort to reach. A woman who had cooked meals so good she left the door open so the whole hallway could smell them. And Ruth Maclaren was 35 years old, and she was studying law. Her body had been telling her what she couldn't do her entire life. She had been disagreeing with it her entire life. She had a plan for her future, a specific, personal, deeply held plan, and she was working toward it every single day. They were on the sofa on a Saturday morning. That is where they were when the one person they had trusted completely decided, on their behalf, that he knew better than they did what their lives were worth. They never got to push back on that. They never got to show him he was wrong. And the life he told himself he was saving them from was never waiting for them. It was never coming. The only thing that took everything from Bethany and Ruth Maclaren was him. Sadly, family massacres caused by financial problems are more common than people think. In fact, around half of these cases are linked to money issues. In the next case we're about to discuss, an entire family was also killed one by one because of financial struggles. And just only by understanding the warning signs can we hope to stop the next Mark Barton before he destroys innocent lives.